There are moments when you find yourself alone staring at a wall, washing dishes, or lying in bed and suddenly you're speaking, not out loud, but inside the words form clearly. You're answering someone who isn't there, defending yourself against an accusation that was never made, or saying, finally, what you wish you had said 3 days ago. If any part of this feels familiar to you, you're not alone. And if you ever feel like sharing your experience, the comments are open. It's not madness. It's not rehearsal for something real. It's the mind's quiet way of organizing what it couldn't process in the moment. A conversation that never happened, but needed to exist somewhere, even if only in the silence between thoughts. The mind rehearses dialogues to feel in control of what it can never predict. The mind doesn't like uncertainty. It moves through the day collecting moments that feel unfinished, words left unsaid, reactions misunderstood, tensions unresolved. And when the world finally goes quiet, it begins its work. It reconstructs the scene. It scripts what should have been said. It builds a version of events where you were ready. This isn't preparation, it's compensation. The real conversation already ended or never started at all. But the mind refuses to let it remain shapeless, so it gives it form. It rehearses lines for a play that closed before you arrived. And in doing so, it finds a strange comfort not in changing the past, but in feeling like you could have. Control is an illusion the mind builds carefully, and these imagined dialogues are part of that architecture. They don't change what happened, but they change how it feels to remember. And sometimes that's enough to let the day finally end. Imagined conversations emerge when silence gives space for anxiety to speak. Silence is rarely empty. When the noise of the day fades, when there's no screen to stare at, no voice demanding attention, the mind fills the void with its own. And what surfaces first is rarely peace. It's the weight of what wasn't said, the tension that never found release, the worry that something was left wrong. Anxiety doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a conversation. You replay what someone said to you, searching for hidden meaning. You imagine what they're thinking now in their own silence. You construct their response, their judgment, their version of you, and then you defend yourself against it, even though none of it is real. These dialogues feel productive. They feel like problem solving, but there's something else, a way for unresolved emotion to move through you without being named. The mind doesn't know how to sit with uncertainty, so it creates scenarios. It gives anxiety a voice, a script, a stage, and you listen, because at least then you're not alone with the silence. The brain creates perfect responses for situations that have already occurred. There's a particular cruelty in hindsight. Hours after a conversation ends, the perfect reply arrives, clear, calm, precise. Exactly what you needed to say. Except the moment is gone, the other person has moved on, and you're left holding words that have nowhere to go but inward. So the mind does what it does best. It rewinds. It replays the scene. But this Chimi, you're different. You don't stumble. You don't freeze. You say exactly what you mean, and it lands perfectly. The other person hears you, understands you, maybe even apologizes. The version of you in this imagined exchange is sharper, steadier, more whole. But this isn't about changing the past. It's about soothing the sting of how it felt to be caught off guard. The mind rewrites history not to erase what happened, but to prove you weren't powerless, that you could have handled it, that somewhere inside you, the right words existed, even if they arrived too late to matter. Rehearsing dialogues is a discreet way to avoid future regret. The mind has learned to fear regret more than almost anything else. It knows the weight of words left unspoken, the hollow ache of moments where silence won when courage should have. So it prepares. It rehearses conversations that haven't happened yet, building scripts for futures that may never arrive. You imagine telling someone how you really feel. You practice setting a boundary. You run through the difficult conversation you've been avoiding, testing different tones, different approaches, different versions of bravery. It feels like preparation, like you're getting ready to finally speak. But often, The rehearsal itself becomes the performance. The only audience is you. There's safety in this. If you play it out in your mind first, you can control the outcome. You can predict their reaction, adjust your words, avoid the mistakes that might lead to rupture. The rehearsal protects you from the vulnerability of improvisation, but it also keeps you circling the same conversations, never quite ready to step into the real ones. Because in your mind, you can always try again. The mind replays scenes as if it could correct the past. There are moments that refuse to stay buried, a conversation that went wrong, a misunderstanding that wasn't cleared, an exchange where you felt small or misunderstood or powerless. The mind returns to these scenes again and again, like fingers pressing on a bruise to see if it still hurts. But it doesn't just replay them, it rewrites them. You say what you should have said. You stand your ground. You clarify, defend, explain. The other person listens this time. They see you differently. The scene shifts, and suddenly you're not the one left feeling broken. The past bends just slightly in your favor. Of course, none of it changes what actually happened. The real conversation is still frozen in time, unchanged and unchangeable, but the mind doesn't care about facts. It cares about resolution, and if reality won't provide it, imagination will. These repeated revisions aren't denial. They're the mind's way of trying to make peace with something it can't let go, even if that peace only exists in the space between thoughts. Conversations that never happen alleviate emotions that were left unspoken. Some feelings don't have a place to go. They sit inside you, waiting for permission to be spoken. But the right moment never comes, or the person isn't safe enough, or the words feel too big, too raw, too likely to break something you're not ready to lose. So they stay silent, but they don't disappear. The mind finds another way. It creates the conversation you can't have in real life. You tell them everything, how they hurt you, how you miss them, how angry you are, how much you still care. The words pour out, uncensored, complete, and something shifts. Not in the world, but in you. The pressure releases, just slightly. The emotion finds shape, even if no one else will ever hear it. These phantom dialogues become a kind of exhale, a release valve for what can't be said out loud. They don't solve anything. They don't change the relationship, but they give your feelings somewhere to exist outside the tightness of your chest. And sometimes, that's all the mind needs, not resolution, but acknowledgement, a witness, even if that witness is only yourself. Mental rehearsal offers security where reality is unpredictable. Reality is wildly uncontrollable. People don't follow scripts. They react in ways you can't anticipate. They misunderstand or refuse to listen, or say things that cut deeper than you prepared for. Every real conversation carries the risk of being misunderstood, dismissed, or hurt. And the mind, protective as it is, searches for ways to minimize that risk. So it builds rehearsals, safe simulations where you control all the variables. You know what they'll say because you're writing both sides. You can test outcomes without consequence. Try anger, try calm, try vulnerability. See what works. Adjust, revise. In these mental drafts, nothing can truly go wrong because nothing is truly at stake. But there's a cost to this safety. The more you rehearse, the harder it becomes to step into the unpredictable mess of actual conversation. Real dialogue demands presence, flexibility, the willingness to not know what comes next. And if you've spent too long in the safety of your own mind, the real world starts to feel too dangerous to enter. So you stay in rehearsal, circling the same scenes, safer, quieter, and increasingly alone. Imagination constructs versions of ourselves that are calmer, more grounded, or more courageous. In the theater of the mind, you become who you wish you were, the version of you that doesn't hesitate, that speaks clearly without the tremor in your voice, that sets boundaries without guilt, that says no or yes or enough and means it. This imagined self moves through conversations with a steadiness the real you rarely feels. It's not dishonesty, it's aspiration dressed as rehearsal. You're watching yourself be braver, more composed, more certain, and in those moments, it feels real, the words clear. Your presence is solid. You're not performing strength, you're embodying it. Even if it only exists in the privacy of your thoughts, it matters because for a moment, you believe you could be that person. But these imagined versions cast a shadow. They set a standard the real you struggles to meet. And when actual conversations unfold messy, stumbling, imperfect, the gap between who you are and who you rehearsed being feels wider. The mind meant to prepare you to build confidence. Instead, it sometimes leaves you feeling like you're always falling short of the self you know you could be. If only the world would pause long enough to let you find the right words. Dialogued thoughts emerge when emotions are trapped inside. Emotions don't always arrive with language. Sometimes they're just weight-heavy, shapeless, lodged somewhere between your chest and throat. You know something's wrong, or unresolved, or still raw, but you can't name it. You can't explain it, even to yourself. So it sits there, wordless and insistent, refusing to dissolve. The mind tries to help. It turns feeling into dialogue. It gives your emotion a voice, a character, a conversation. Suddenly you're arguing with someone who isn't there, or explaining yourself to an invisible audience. The words aren't for them, they're for you. They're the mind's attempt to translate what the body already knows, to give form to what's formless, to make sense of what hurts. These inner dialogues aren't random. They emerge when something needs to be processed but has no external outlet. When you can't tell the person what you're feeling, when there's no safe space to speak, when the emotion is too complicated to untangle alone. So the mind creates a scene, assigns roles, and lets the conversation unfold, not to solve anything, but to let the feeling move, to stop it from staying stuck inside you, silent and unnamed. The mind talks to itself when it can't find a safe place to be heard. There's a loneliness that lives inside connection. You can be surrounded by people and still feel like no one truly hears you, not because they don't care, but because some things feel too fragile to say out loud, too complicated, too likely to be misunderstood. So you hold them in, and the mind, needing to be witnessed, turns inward. It creates its own listener, a presence that doesn't judge, doesn't interrupt, doesn't look away. You speak to this invisible audience, explaining, defending, confessing things you'd never say to another person. And in a strange way, it helps. Not because the conversation is real, but because the act of speaking, even silently, makes you feel less alone. Les invisibles, like some part of you is finally being heard, even if only by yourself. This isn't pathology, it's adaptation. The mind finding a way to process what is nowhere else to go. But it also reveals something tender and need to be understood that runs so deep. You'll create understanding where none exists. And maybe that's the quietest truth of all, that sometimes the conversations we have with ourselves are the only ones where we feel truly safe enough to tell the whole story. These conversations, the ones that live only in your head, aren't signs of confusion or weakness. They're not rehearsals for madness. They're simply the mind doing what it was designed to do: process, organize, and make sense of a world that rarely pauses long enough to be understood in the moment. You're not broken for replaying scenes that already ended. You're not strange for scripting dialogues that will never be spoken. You're human, and the human mind needs space to think out loud, even when no one else is listening. These inner exchanges are part of how you survive uncertainty, how you metabolize emotion, how you prepare for a world that refuses to be predictable. So if you recognize yourself in any of this, if you've ever caught yourself mid-conversation with someone who isn't there, know that you're not alone in it. Millions of minds are doing the same thing right now, in the quiet spaces between everything else. It's one of the most common things we do, and one of the things we talk about the least. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing. There's more to explore in the silence we all share.